What's up, guys? Today we're finally starting the transmission replacement series on my 1995 Toyota Corolla. This is, as I said in my previous video, a manual, so it's going to be the 5-speed transmission. And this one, the issue that we have with this one is that it's having trouble going into first gear and third gear sometimes. It grinds in third, so you have to know when to shift it. And the main issue is it pops out of fifth gear. So basically for the last, let's see, 10 months maybe? Yeah, 10 months. I've been holding it into fifth gear. But now it's finally time to replace it, and the way I'm going to do this is I'm not going to make a huge, like, 1 or 2 hour video about this, because that's just crazy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to split it up into multiple parts so that I get multiple videos out of it, and so that you can get multiple uses out of it. So we're going to take out parts one by one, and each part or each assembly of parts, if they go together, will be one video. So let me show you what I mean. So what I mean is this: I'll be making a video about taking out the radiator and the rest of the cooling system, the air box, the throttle plate, and the cable, the fuse boxes, the battery. That is, I believe, pretty much it until we get to the transmission, because the transmission's right there. So I think that's all. I will also be replacing all the motor mounts, all 4 of them, which I have. So I'll be making a video about each individual motor mount and show you how to replace them. So I guess let's get started. And we'll be starting with the cooling system. So let's drain the fluid and take out the radiator. Now, to drain the fluid, get yourself a big bucket or a drip pan or something. I managed to put my car up high enough so that I can fit this big bucket here, and I'm gonna go ahead and take these out. You don't need to, but I will, because I'm gonna need access to everything here since I'm changing out the transmission. So basically what you want to do, see that thing right there? That has a little plastic screw on the other side that you undo, and then the fluid will start draining from the radiator straight down through this hole into our pan. So let's do that. Now, if you're looking for it from the top, it's going to be on the passenger side, right there. And you might sometimes need a pair of pliers or something to get to it. You can actually undo this so you can get more room. Just pull that out. You might need a pair of pliers. Hopefully I don't, but it looks like I do, because it's super tight. Alright, now you might have an easier time doing this from above, but since I took the all those plastic shields off, I will come from underneath with this pair of pliers and basically try and twist this loose. Oh, there it goes, it broke loose. And now it should come off by hand. Obviously make sure that the car is cold. When you do this, you do not want to do this on a warm car. This is very difficult. It's coming out very slowly, and there's barely any room because of these AC lines, which is why I think it's easier to do it from up above. Let me get you closer. Oh, there we go, it's starting to drip. Now, don't take it out all the way because it's going to start coming out the back, but to accelerate the process, simply open the cap. Now, my process is already accelerated because it can get air through here, but obviously after you drain it, there's probably going to be some dirt and debris in there, so consider replacing the coolant. Now, while the radiator is draining, you might want to work on removing this fan, because this is going to be in the way of, or not necessarily in the way, but it's just more stuff to worry about when wiggling the radiator out. So you might want to just take these 2 bolts out, and it also has 2 bolts at the bottom, and you might want to take those 4 out, and then this will just come out it'll slide right out. We will have to remove the top radiator hose and the bottom radiator hose, and we will also be removing the overflow tank, which is underneath the battery. I will be removing the thermostat, so this will also show you how to replace the thermostat together with the radiator, any hoses, the fans, and yeah, let's keep going. You might want to spray these with some WD-40 actually, because this one was kind of stuck in there, and you don't want to break these because, well, not the bolts, you don't care about the bolts, you can always buy new ones. It's the fan that you don't want to break because it's plastic. Also, don't lose these. Alright, now after you've taken all the bolts out, well, after you've taken 3 out and successfully broken one of them, there's an electrical connection right here under the upper radiator hose, which you're going to have to remove. That connection is actually for the O2 sensor, so it has nothing to do with the fan, but it's just attached to the fan. Also, don't drop your radiator cap in the bucket full of coolant. So put that back on. The actual connection for the fan is here between the battery and the fan, and now the fan is actually stuck between all of this, so we're going to have to remove the upper radiator hose to get rid of the fan. So get yourself a pair of pliers and move this out of the way. Hopefully, yep, it broke loose right away. Now get your pan underneath. Actually, right now you could just tighten up the petcock again for the radiator because it's all drained, so the radiator's empty. And now, get your pan right underneath, and as you take this out, you want to aim it to the pan, just in case. Yep, I can already hear fluid sloshing around in there, which, there it is. Out comes the fan. Now, we have a lot more access down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to center the pan. I'm going to center my drain pan to this hose, and then I'm going to tilt the hose down. You tilt the hose down and aim for the pan, and the rest of the fluid that is on the hose or in the hose and throughout the engine should come right out. Also, don't take this out just yet. Don't take it out from the engine block just yet, because there is coolant right there waiting to come out. So this will help it not come out, and we're going to take the bottom radiator hose off first, because that way we can drain it from the bottom, and then when we take this top one off, nothing's going to come out. Now on your bottom radiator hose this might be different, but on mine I actually have a hose clamp because I replaced the original clamp a while ago because it was leaking. Just get a flathead screwdriver if you have one of these and untighten this carefully. Alright, so I didn't film it because it was a little bit more difficult down there to be upside down, have a screwdriver in my hand, and pull the hose off, and I couldn't fit the tripod under the car, blah blah blah. So anyway, what I basically did is the same thing as for this. I undid the hose clamp, I pulled it off, and then I had the pan in my hand so I could center it as it was dripping, and then I slowly pulled the hose back, and so I slowly took the hose off, and then I let it drip. So now the radiator is basically disconnected from everything except from the body of the car, and it's held on by these 2 bolts right here, which are 12 millimeters, so we're gonna have to remove these, and in my case, my headlights are held on by zip ties. Yeah, I have nothing to say about that, so I'm just gonna cut them. I just realized that when I routed the wires for the lights, the LEDs, if you remember that video, I went back and actually fixed all that wiring, but this, I just realized that it's going through the mount for the radiator, literally through the rubber. So this side's already broken. I should have bought new ones. I'm probably just going to cut the rubber on this side and get rid of it that way. Alright, Alright, so let's get our 12 millimeter with a useless huge extension and slowly take these out. Now hopefully yours are not going to be as rusty, so you might have an easier time. So now, oh yes, these come off the radiator. That is awesome, because now we can just pull up and out comes the radiator. So there you go, this is the radiator. If you want to replace it or actually even clean it, this is a great time. I might run the pressure washer through it. Obviously be very careful if you do that. You don't want to get too close because these are very thin pieces or fins of aluminum. So you want to go far away. I just want some pressure to like shoot through it and clean out all the dirt. There's a lot of gunk down here. So let's put this aside and we'll worry about this later. Now, just so that you don't lose the bolts, you might want to thread them back in here. I will actually re-thread these back on here because I know I will lose them otherwise. Alright, so now that the distributor is out of the way, and you can do this without the distributor out of the way, but I chose to remove it because it's much easier for the camera to see and for me to work. So if you want to know how to remove and replace this, make sure to check out the video that I have. I don't know if it's going to come out before this one or after, but I will make sure to link it down in the description when it does come out. This is the thermostat housing right here, so if you want to change your thermostat because it's either overheating because it's stuck closed, which is bad, or if it's stuck open, like mine was about a year ago, and I had to replace it because it was stuck open, and it was the middle of winter, and my car wouldn't warm up because it was just cooling it non-stop, and that was a problem because one, I didn't have heat, and two, the car was using a lot more gas, and it was just not running right because it was always cold. The engine was never able to warm up. So you want to disconnect this connection right here, and you want to push your pan under the transmission because coolant is going to come spewing out of everywhere, and you want to get yourself a 10 millimeter wrench. Actually, maybe I can do this with a ratchet. I think I can because I have these small ones. These are so useful, these small ones. So get this off and out of the way. Now I'm not going to take this whole assembly off because I will need to reseal it if I do, and I really don't want to do that. So I'm just going to take the thermostat housing off, which will also serve as a thermostat replacement video. So carefully loosen the bolts, make sure to not lose them. Take the second bolt out, and there are only 2 bolts, and the thermostat is going to be right behind this. Be very careful with these because they're aluminum and they're very very sensitive to over torquing. Now, great. Well, apparently there's a cable attached to this, and I don't like that, so I'm just going to cut the zip tie. So I'll go ahead and cut this. Just make sure to not cut the radiator hose. There we go. And now carefully pull the thermostat out. Just be careful because coolant is going to flow out of it. Oh, out it comes. And there comes the mess. And I made a huge mess. That's why it's good to have a drip pan, a big one, underneath. Now this thermostat is still good, so I'm not going to replace it, but this is how you replace it basically. And obviously you don't need to take any of this out, like the radiator, hoses, or anything. You just have to unbolt this. Thermostat goes in. I mean, you pull the old one out, it'll go in like this. Put the old one in. You bolt this back down, and you just want to make it snug, but you have to be very careful because, as I said, these are very very small bolts and they're aluminum, so they're very sensitive. So just be careful when you do this. Alright, now that we have that out, we can go ahead and remove the upper radiator hose. By simply twisting it, and hopefully it breaks loose. There we go. Now this is going to keep dripping for a while, so make sure you leave the pan under there. If you want to cover this up with something, go ahead. Alright, so to finish up the removal of the cooling system, we're going to have to remove the overflow tank, or reservoir, whatever you want to call it, which is located under the battery actually, so I have to remove the battery to get to here. And to remove the battery, you know, it's just you remove the terminals, and it's got a little hook on this side with a plate on top. You want to unbolt it from here, unbolt it from here, remove the battery, then it's got a little plastic cover, or you know, sort of a plate that it sits on. You want to just take that off. It does not bolt it on or anything, it's just there. And now there's going to be two 10mm bolts down there that we have to get to, and I suggest using an extension. Of course, these are rounded because they're rusty, so I'm going to have to use my 6.10mm. There we go, comes right off. Oh. Alright, so finally I was able to get this bolt off. I ended up using, I soaked it in WD-40, waited about 5 minutes, and I didn't even bother trying afterwards. I actually brought out a torch and made it really hot. Just be careful not to melt the plastic, but it seems to be very tough plastic because I actually had the flame on it for a few seconds by accident and it did nothing. It didn't even make it dark or anything. So it seems to be a very tough plastic if you have the original one. And then the second I put the vice grips on and started turning, it came out like it was butter. The threads are fine, but I will be replacing this nut because it's kind of damaged, and as you can see, maybe, yeah, it's kind of screwed up. So, but I will keep the other one because the other one's just fine. So that's how you remove everything that has to do with the cooling system on the car. Now I'll just show you quickly how to put everything back on. Alright, so let's go ahead and put the cooling system back on. Now, I didn't show you, but I also removed the heater core hoses, which I tucked behind the intake. And go ahead and put those back in. Alright, now let's put the thermostat housing with the thermostat back on, as well as the hoses. So remember, the thermostat goes with the bigger part towards the inside. If you plug the hole, don't forget to take out whatever you put in there. There we go. As I said earlier, these are aluminum, and be very careful not to strip them, so don't over tighten them. They're small 10mm bolts. What I would do is just tighten them by hand, and then take the wrench and give it like, I don't know, 1/8 of a turn maybe. Don't forget to connect the coolant sensor, or the coolant temperature sensor. Let's go ahead and put the radiator in now. Alright, so the radiator's back in. Yeah, it's kind of wobbly, but whatever. Put the hoses back on. So this one goes like this. If you suspect that you're losing coolant due to bad hose clamps, then go ahead and replace them. This would be a very good time to do that. Go ahead and get your hose clamp for the bottom. So before we do anything else, let's get the overflow tank back in here. Now, as you remember, this gave me a lot of trouble when I was trying to take it out. So what I did was I cleaned up the threads on the bracket and then put new nuts on. And it seems to be a lot better. That is in there. This goes back inside. And then right over here. Actually, I'll put it underneath. Perfect. I almost forgot one very, very important thing, and that is the fan. Now make sure to orient it the way that it was, and it had this connection was on the side with the battery, and then it had, mine has a metal shield here, which I remember was on that side where the motor mount is, and there's a little clip here, which I guess you can't really see, this one right here, and this is where the O2 sensor hooks on, so that's how you know. Simply slide this in. And once you've got all your bolts in, make them all snug. But remember, don't over tighten them because you are working with plastic here. Alright, so now that I have zip tied, I only actually zip tied the bottom. The bottom was also broken from when I took it off. Now just put the radiator hoses back and tighten the hose clamps. And all we need to do is bleed the coolant, or not bleed the coolant, get the air out of the system and fill it up with coolant. And we will be all set. Alright, so it's been many months since the last clip you guys just saw. It's actually January of 2018 right now, which is when the video is being published. The other clips were filmed during the summer of 2017, but I completely forgot to film the end and I'm just now getting to editing it, so I just want to finish up the video. I bought this coolant, Prestone. I think it's a good brand. I've had it in the car for the past 30,000 miles. And it's been good. It's not the original Toyota, which I would like to put in, but I'm going to do that after I do the timing belt and water pump on this. Maybe the water pump, not sure yet, depends on the budget. But either way, this one's good for now. It's just green. Just make sure you flush everything out of the system if you don't have green stuff already in it. This is the concentrated version, so it's not the pre-diluted one, the 50-50. So you will have to do that. Just eyeball it 50-50, not a big deal if you get it. If you get too much coolant in there. However, try to not get too much water in there because then in the winter you'll have issues with it freezing and that's very bad. So what you do, you open up your radiator cap. As you can see, obviously mine's already full, but you open up your radiator cap. It takes about, I forgot how much, but so put in, what I did was I put in one of these, the full gallon, then topped it off with distilled water, so you can only use distilled water, don't use anything else. Top it off with distilled water, then you turn on the engine. That's for the EGR, ignore that. Let it run, and it's gonna start sucking the coolant in. And after it starts sucking the coolant in, you're gonna top it off again. Make sure you fill the reservoir as well with coolant. You can't really see it in this car. It's kind of stupid because that's the full line right there, and down there is the minimum line or the low line, but you literally can't see anything unless you take those plastic shields off and look from underneath. But kind of eyeball it and make sure it's filled all the way, or not all the way, but to the full line, and top it off here. Make sure the heat is on all the way, full blast or not, doesn't matter. On face or anything really, not on recirculate, so make sure you're sucking in air from outside. And you do that so that you can get coolant flowing through the heater core, which is right there. And after you let it run for a while, drive it a little bit, Make sure it doesn't overheat. Make sure it heats up all the way, so you have to let it heat up all the way up to operating temperature, which if you're doing this in the summer should not be an issue. If you're doing this in the winter, then good luck. Now that it reached operating temperature, you can go ahead and turn the car off, let it cool down a little bit. You can't open the radiator cap just yet. So after that, make sure you top it off. Get pretty much a 50-50 ratio of coolant to distilled water. If after you run the car, it's not all the way full, top it off. And as long as the reservoir is within range, it's filled within range, and this is topped off, you should be fine. Just keep an eye on the temperature gauge. Make sure that it doesn't overheat. After a day or so of driving, check it again. Make sure you get heat. If you don't get heat, that means you have air in the heater core. So check that, and that's about it. That about wraps it up. So stay tuned for the next video, and I hope this one was helpful and that you enjoyed it.